let's start off with some introductions of the team. And I know, Rachel, you're more here on a kind of operational, letting people in. She's our doorkeeper and bouncer.
Doing my best.
But I do want you to introduce yourself. So go ahead and do that.
I'm Rachel Clemens. I'm the CMO at Mighty Citizen. I actually spoke with Nicole yesterday. So if you saw our session, you would have been part of, you somewhat know me already. I'm mostly here today as like the doorkeeper and running the chat and stuff like that, but I have no problem speaking up when I have something to say. So if that gets triggered, I'll participate.
Yep. Andrew?
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Buck. I'm the content strategist at Mighty Citizen, specializing in copy and message development, especially for associations, and I've spent my whole career in this space.
Jarrett?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jarrett Way. I am the marketing manager here at Mighty Citizen, which this means that I write a lot for the agency, a lot of our insights, articles, sort of our partnership content as well. I write a lot of that. Looking forward to this. I've been in kind of the either directly in the mission-driven space or tangential to the mission-driven space for a few years now. So I love my work, I love what I do, and thank you all for joining us.
Yep. And I will say that my first introduction to Jarrett was him writing a description of a cookie, which I could taste. So anyway, there is a gift in that. Okay, so guys, we're going to kick this off. We did have one question, and Scott unfortunately can't be with us but this morning, but he did ask the question, so we want to put it out there. As it's recorded, we are going to send the recordings out, so if you you'll have that information, and that way he can get this answer. But he had asked specifically about some new trends that we're seeing regarding website layout and design. So Andrew, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to answer this assuming that some of y'all on the call are either on the tail end of doing some website redesign, maybe imagining some in the future. So with that in mind, I think what I've really noticed across this sector is a lot of holdover from 2019, and you can probably imagine why that is. But things such as websites that have full page headers, meaning when someone lands on your website, their entire screen is filled with a single image and maybe a single block of text. And I think that's really indicative of, at least from what I've seen, a trend over maybe the last, I don't know, 2 to 3 years or so, of people really sort of catching on to the value of simplicity and usability in design. I think for a long time we were trapped by the desire to be clever in our design online, because we thought that being clever was the way to cut through. But I think we realize now that the real way to cut through, and by cut through I mean to really distinguish ourselves from everybody else out there, is to be highly usable and highly readable. So you see things like a lot more white space on websites. You see an increased emphasis on user testing, usability testing. Page load time is extremely important, especially on mobile. So if I was an association right now and I was deciding where to spend my website dollars, I would imagine I would want to start by making sure that those very basic things are buttoned up, that my page is highly mobile friendly, loads quickly, has plenty of white space, is highly readable on every device. And then I would start playing around with some of the more interesting web design trends, which might be things like more dynamic scrolling, meaning when someone comes to your website and they start scrolling down, it kind of animates and different things move in and fly in, touches of animation. And then the last thing I'll say here is there's been research that shows that users of websites are so savvy now that it's not just that they don't like stock photography, they literally don't see it. it's a blind spot. They can't remember seeing a web page with stock photography just seconds after having visited it. So again, if I was an association deciding where to invest my dollars, I would invest in custom photography and illustration. Custom means it's just for you, and the quality means people will pay attention to it. So I'll just stop there for now.
And I'm going to ask an add-on question to this. I'm going to throw you on the spot here, but because content is such a big part of the website, it's actually the hardest part. It's the heavy lift in in the whole web design project. You know, can you give like a handful of hints on how people can streamline? I know from my experience in talking with associations, they often tend to be very content heavy. They have a ton of content that's kind of all over the place, and it's disorganized. It's coming from 15 different departments. What top 5, top 3, whatever you want to do.
Whatever I want to do.
Yeah. Hold on. We only have a half an hour.
I guess, yeah. I guess the question is like, if I was a communication team or communication person in an association, really of any size, the first question I would probably ask myself is like, what is really my content goal? Because they really are different. For some associations, the goal is we just need to produce more content. We need to say more things in more ways about more things. For others, though, it's more about accuracy and updating stuff. You know, we worked with some associations, for example, in the medical or legal space. And for them, it's not so much about the amount of content they produce, but ensuring that everything on their website and in their various digital resources is highly accurate. So I would start there by figuring out really what do I want to accomplish. And then once I've decided that, I think the next thing I would do is craft and implement some good content governance. I mean, listen, I understand that this is not the most exciting stuff in the world, but it's so critical. So like governance, for example, just FYI, is the sort of set of policies, you know, protocols, procedures that your organization institutes to ensure that you are creating content that is relevant, measurable, published and archived in the right way. So I would start by defining goals. Then I would implement content governance across my organization. We have a number of good articles and resources at the Mighty Citizen site that can kind of introduce you to exactly how that happens. And then when it comes to like trends or cool content stuff, I would say I would love to see more associations speak in more concrete and vernacular terms. I've read so many pages over the last several years of association websites, from their event descriptions to their continuing education course descriptions to research that they do to just sort of their general website content. And there's this real tendency for it to be very vague in the language and to be highly buttoned up. And what it does, I think, often is leave people either confused or bored, and we don't want either of those things. So I would love it if more organizations in general spoke in concrete language, that is, using language about things with, you know, specific, detailed physical presence in the real world. And then beyond that, spoke more casually and acknowledged that when you write digitally, when you put something on your website or on social media, or you send out a marketing email, you're kind of communicating across like space and time, right, to these other human beings. And if you keep that in mind, you might be more likely to write in a language that that will sort of resonate with them, that will feel like a human talking to a human, not a committee talking to a human, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Now, Christina had popped in here and had asked who is generally the best babysitter for good content governance. And I know, Chris, I'm gonna call on you to offer your answer and why you think that, but I also want to hear what Andrew has to say too. So whoever wants to go first.
Oh, Chris, please go ahead.
Which Chris are you referring to? Me?
I'm sorry, you're the
Okay.
one who put in the answer.
It wasn't really an answer to that question, but
Okay.
I mean, I can tell you what we've done here, and we, I think, like many associations, had a well, maybe not like many like some associations had a 1994 looking website for many years, very clunky, limited template functionality, all of that when I started with the organization back in 2016. And first we hired the right team and the right consultant, right, to work with us. So we had to make sure we had the right infrastructure in place and the right experts. So we didn't try to do it kind of with the resources that we had at that time, and put some governance in place, which I'll talk about in a second. But really thought about this kind of minimum viable product structure here, so that, you know, to do the amount of work that we needed to do on our website, it probably would have taken 2 years to get the website to where we wanted it to be. No one has time to build a website for 2 years and upgrade a website. So we did it in about 6 months and just put the framework and the right pieces in place, and kind of got the major content pieces, you know, looking at all the analytics where most of our members and users went to. For us, it's clinical guidelines. That's where people need to go, clinicians need to go to figure out how to treat patients. We had to make sure that was buttoned up really tight and very usable, and did a lot of focus groups, all of that. But beyond that, most of our website beyond that was just content. So we just kind of brought that over. It was kind of clunky looking, but that's fine because we didn't have as many people going to that part of the website. And what we've done since then is we will never do a quote unquote major upgrade again. We will do upgrades continuously to the end of time now. And what that takes is you got to have budget, right? Mm-hmm. So we don't have this kind of episodic type of every 3 years we have to go to the board and get this massive amount of money for our website. We don't do that anymore. We just consistently budget for this. And so we're on, I think, the 4th version of this website now, where we're just continually building on, putting in new features, new functionality. We're investing in photography, as Andrew had mentioned, to get away from the stock photos. We want actual photos of our members. We want actual photos of our donors on our foundation website, those types of things, because that's what our members resonate with. We have an internal team that looks at the most highly used pages on our website. So we're driven by data. So how can we understand where people go after they leave those pages? So can we increase the usage of those kind of secondary pages? Can we direct people to other pages we want them to go to, like our annual conference? Mm-hmm. So are there ways that we can get people to click in other areas as well?
So, and who manages that?
So it's a team of people internally that meet on a weekly basis and kind of look through stats and those types of things.
I love that you've dedicated enough time to look at that weekly. Mm-hmm. Congratulations.
Yeah, I would say you're a bit of an outlier in that way. So my thoughts on content governance, the question I think was who in the organization, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes, who?
Yeah. Like most things, I would say it depends. It depends on the resources you have available. So if, like we just heard, you can dedicate a team that meets weekly, you should do that. But I think a lot of organizations aren't quite there for various reasons. The way that we help our clients develop their content governance plans usually ends up involving some sort of team. And that team usually comprises someone from communications, various subject matter experts in the various departments across the association, someone from the C-suite to the extent that you have that, someone at the executive level, and like we just heard, that the goal of that, what we often call the content committee, is to examine what needs to be created. Sometimes more importantly, what needs to be archived. Now, sometimes in some smaller associations, this absolutely can be a one-person job. But whether it's a committee or a single person, one thing I really want to emphasize, in addition to the fact that content governance is critical to your ability to create, publish, and manage content over the long term, is that it is a bit of a cultural shift for a lot of associations. I think we just heard a description of association that has fully embraced that cultural shift. But if you've got management or executive leadership that doesn't believe in the power and value of content, then it's probably going to be nearly impossible to shift toward a culture of content. So, but if you can, then it can be. I think frankly, it's the whole point.
And I think there's a lot about educating the other staff too. So it's bringing that to the forefront and letting everybody know that this is why, and then letting them know that again and again and again. Because they're not living it. They're not living it.
Yeah, great point.
So I wanted to ask a question. So we had another question that had come in prior to, and this was about video. And so Jared, I'm going to target you on this, so I hope you can handle it. How can I create compelling videos while everyone is remote without it looking like a bunch of talking heads?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And, you know, I think video it's another form of content, right? It's the way that we all consume content differently. We all have preferences in how we consume content, but your video content and how you produce that right now, you have to get over the fact that there's going to be any sort of production value there, right? You're all working remotely. The people on your team who would probably want to be in these videos talking about your association for your members, for those audiences, it doesn't have to look like a bunch of talking heads, but I think what you want to really focus on here, rather than the way it looks, is simply the message, right? So what are you really wanting to get across here? And focusing on that, kind of distilling it down, and then seeing with your resources the ways that you have to be able to present that in a way that might be captivating. And I also just say, lean into the fact that you're doing a socially distanced production. We're all living in the same kind of circumstances right now. People are going to understand if you start off your video and say, you know, this was produced entirely remotely. Lean into that, because people will kind of see that for themselves. They're doing sort of the same things. And as long as you're getting that message across, which is really the heart of what that video would be even talking about, it doesn't really matter how it looks. So it may look like a bunch of talking heads, and that's not necessarily the worst thing, but if you have the resources to maybe do something else to get a little bit creative with it, you can do that, but absolutely lean into the fact that it's not going to be, you know, the highest quality video ever.
Yeah, like admitting it and saying it's socially distanced is like making it very relatable. Right?
Exactly.
I feel like we're going to get into like 2021, 2022, and we're going to see videos from this time, and we're going to be like, oh, that's so 2020.
Right.
You know, you're going to know exactly when that was shot.
It is in a lot of ways, it is an era of content we're living through right now. So it will be referential in that way later on.
Yeah. So does anybody have any questions about content governance? We have your experts here, so please unmute, ask any questions you have. Vernon, I see your bubble up, and I see Lindsay's hand. So Vernon, you want to go first?
Actually, I clicked the wrong button. I didn't have a question as of yet, but as you know, eventually I will have one. So
okay, well then we'll call on you later. Okay, Lindsay, go ahead.
So how do you, when you have an association with a multitude of audiences, so we have kind of students that are participating in our content, and then we have faculty members, and then above them, administrators also, and making sure, you know, I know you were talking about that stop the button up language in concrete, and that's kind of the way we've been moving, but that's a different tone for all three of those audiences. And how do you tackle that all within one place without it seeming like a disjointed website?
And I'm going to tack on that she also has a very small staff. So
yeah.
Yeah, so this is something that we encounter a lot at Mighty Citizen, because we also work with a number of universities and colleges. And I would argue, in my experience anyway, university and higher education marketing is the hardest marketing out there, period. Because in part of what you described, very different audiences with not only different needs, but often conflicting needs. or wants from their communication. So how do we tackle that? Well, first of all, we acknowledge that truth. We sort of make peace with it. And then we get about the business of crafting a governance structure that is a lot more detailed. So if the question is, how do we communicate with each of them discreetly? That's where governance comes in. If it's, how do we send out or how do we create a web page or send out an email or create some sort of social content that speaks to all of them at the same time? I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know that it can be done. I mean, so much of, as you know, communication is marketing. It's really just about figuring out who you're talking to, determining what they need or want, and then giving it to them. But when you have those three unique audiences, again, who sometimes actually want different things from you, then I don't know that you can communicate with them all at once. So it becomes all the more important, I would think, to really get good on the data end and segmenting and communicating to them separately. And then when you do have to communicate to them all the first time, I think my instinct, and I'm just spitballing here, I think my instinct when having to communicate to all three audiences at once would be to emphasize the needs of the most important audience, whatever we happen to deem that to be in that particular piece of communication. That's my initial thinking anyway. I'm sure that's completely unhelpful.
No, actually, so my marketing director would be thrilled to hear you say that this is the hardest job, right? Because
Yeah.
it is, right? And that's part of why I hired her, because I don't want to have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But didn't know if there was some secret we were missing. But no,
Well,
that I think.
You know, I don't think there is. And if you find it, please, please, please let us know.
I would add one thing that might help. So we produce messaging platforms for our clients, which is basically the foundational elements that set up their content. So, you know, this is why we exist, who we serve, how we talk to those audiences, our brand tone. One nice thing about that is if you can get that down and get that kind of locked, it gives the organization as a whole kind of those pillars to stand on. So while you might talk to each of the audiences slightly differently and they have different needs, you always go back to the messaging platform that has those pillars. I think that actually helps quite a bit to bring some of that cohesiveness.
Yeah, marketing is all about segmentation, right? So if you have your different audiences and you can identify on the front end, these are the messages that we want to be pushing to those audiences, it kind of helps keep you grounded as an organization.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, actually, so my question is that, and this is for Andrew and or Jared, whichever one can answer this, which is pretty basic, is just that in today's times and what we're dealing with you know systemic racism, and then you know we're dealing with the COVID-19 and all. Do you think that, and this is going back to the video footage also for the governance point, do you think that it is more potent if you have a video message up, if associations put a video up coming from the president, the CEO, of dealing with these particular things, or do you think it resonates better with the membership if it's more so in writing, or if it should probably actually be both?
Jared and I might disagree on this. I don't know.
Out your gloves.
Yeah, well, so I'll tell you what my instinct would be. If an association decides that we need to address the various social issues that are of concern right now in a sort of an official way, like from leadership, I would probably lean towards writing them first, because we know that more people read content on the internet than watch content on the internet, which isn't to say that video isn't powerful. We all know it is, and it's growing in popularity, but it hasn't gotten really close to catching up with the written word. So my first instinct would be to write it. And then if you have the time and the resources, and now with a webcam or an iPhone, we all do, to have your president record a message and post that, I think is a great idea. Jared, did you have a thought on that?
I think I would mostly agree with that. Like I said earlier, you know, people consume their content differently. Yes, the written content is consumed largely more than video and multimedia content. But I think in terms of these issues specifically, it's powerful to have kind of the personable approach in video where there is a face and an actual, you know, physical representation of your organization, talking about these issues, talking about whatever it might be, however you want to address it, whatever is helpful, whatever is valuable or representative of your organization. I think there's a lot to be said about that, but I think having both exist is important because it will reach more people, frankly.
Yeah, and if I can add, because Jarrett raises, I think, an excellent point, but this is key. If your association's president is a stiff, then the video could actually maybe do more harm than good. Meaning, what Jarrett's saying is right. A video can be really great at creating a little bit more emotiveness. But if you've got someone speaking who seems uptight or even worse, inauthentic, as if they're saying what they're saying because someone in the communication team told them to say it, then it could maybe actually do some harm, I think. But short of that, then I think Jarrett's spot on.
Well, I am so glad to say that our president, if he decides to do that, will definitely be authentic, passionate about what he says. So,
great.
Good.
I think there's a just briefly, sorry, Nicole. There's a time that we can all remember that everyone was releasing, you know, a statement about either COVID or a lot of the systemic racism that we're seeing in the country. And I would just say that the message, yes, while it should be coming from someone who can give it kind of an authentic feel, make sure that it's helpful and valuable. Again, there's a lot of spaces that you all work in where there is an angle to talk about, and I think a lot of people want to be validated in a lot of ways right now, and I think there's a responsibility to figure out what that looks like for your association.
Mm-hmm. Well, guys, I can't thank you enough for being with us today. There's a couple of things I just want to remind you about. Rachel and I will be active on the chat during our 4:30 presentation of Two Truths and a Lie, which is all about some actionable website modifications that you can do. It is on demand. It's in the partner playground. It's on demand, but the chat will actually be live and we'll be there at 4:30 today. So we're also offering free consultations right now, and you can sign up for one of those at mightycitizen.com/consultations. You can also reach out to me at any point or go through our website. You know, we'll be happy to do that for y'all. And you can catch us at the booth. Please, if you do, to send us a note in the chat. We'd love to chat with you. And we just hope you have a great day and you enjoy day 2. And we really appreciate you getting up early and enjoying some early morning time with us. And Mighty Citizen team, thanks for getting out of bed early.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
I appreciate you.
Thank you. This was great.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank
Have
you
a good
so
day.
much. Have a good day.